My name is Jessica, and if there is one thing I have learned in my 34 years, it is that nothing is ever truly given to you. You earn it brick by brick, dollar by dollar. I live in Portland, America, in the house that I dreamed of since my early 20s. It took me 7 years of relentless work, 7 years of canceled vacations, cut corners, and tired mornings to get here. My colleagues called me frugal, my friends called me stubborn, but I called it discipline. That house was more than wood and nails. It was the proof of my own grit. I paid $80,000 down and signed a mortgage of $2,300 a month. I painted the front door a calm blue, the kind of color that made me breathe easier each time I turned the key. By the steps, I planted lavender that filled the air with sweetness every summer. When I ran my hand along the deed with my name typed in black and bold, I thought, this is it. This is what all those years were for. The truth is, I didn't come from money. My mother raised my sister and me in a small rented house where the roof leaked when it rained too hard and where $10 sometimes had to stretch into dinner for a week. When I started earning, I decided I would never live with that insecurity again. Every raise went straight into savings. Every promotion, I clawed my way to become another line scratched off the savings chart I had taped to my wall. That chart, with its boxes and numbers, stayed with me through every apartment I rented, a reminder of what I was building toward. 2 weeks ago, work sent me to Boston. Just a short trip, for days of meetings and endless coffee. Nothing dramatic. Before leaving, I gave my sister Jenna the spare keys, asked her to feed the cat and water the snake plant. Simple things. Don't worry, she said. I'll take care of it. She smiled in that easy way of hers, the smile that had often let her escape trouble when we were girls. I believed her because she was my sister, and despite our differences, trust between sisters is supposed to mean something. When my plane landed and I finally reached home, the first thing I noticed was the car in my driveway. It wasn't Jenna's. It wasn't anyone I recognized. The garage door, which I always kept neat and empty except for my own boxes, was half open. Inside, I saw cardboard stacked high, labeled with someone else's handwriting. The air in my chest tightened as if I had walked into a stranger's house instead of my own. The front door was unlocked. That was my second shock. I had drilled it into Jenna, always lock the door, no exceptions. My hand trembled as I pushed it open, and the smell hit me first, fried onions and heavy cologne. My living room looked like a yard sale gone wrong. A brown recliner I had never seen before squatted where my pale reading chair had stood. A family photo, faces I didn't know, rested on the mantel where my candle holders once sat. My rug, the one I saved for 6 months to buy, was littered with muddy shoe prints. And under the sofa, my cat peeked out with wide, frantic eyes, as if even she knew this was wrong. Surprise, Jenna called, stepping out from the kitchen with a mug in her hand like she belonged there. Her tone was light, like this was some sort of game. Mark's parents needed a place to stay. Only for a while. Behind her, Mark's parents, George and Linda, stood like they were greeting me at a motel check-in, not in the house I built with every ounce of my effort. George gave me a half-wave before turning back toward the TV. Linda smiled nervously, as if this was awkward but reasonable. My eyes darted to Jenna. "You've got so much space, Jessica," she said softly, as if soothing a child. "Be kind." I couldn't answer right away. My gaze landed on the wall near the hallway where I had once taped that savings chart, my boxes of numbers and dates. I remembered how I had stood there after my first big bonus, circling the new number I could add to the total. I thought of every Friday night I skipped dinner out, so I could add another 100 to the account. I thought of every time I told myself just a little longer, just a little more, until the day I could finally hold the keys. My stomach clenched, hot and bitter. "This is my house," I said at last. My voice was low but clear. "My name is on the deed. Mine." Jenna smiled, as if I had told a harmless joke. "We'll talk after you sleep. You're tired from traveling." But I wasn't tired. I was shaking. I stood there in my own living room, watching my sister stand in front of me, speaking like she had every right to rearrange my life. Behind her, George reached for the remote and changed the channel. Linda asked where I kept the extra towels. And my cat stayed crouched under the sofa, her eyes fixed on me like she was waiting for me to fix this. Something cracked inside me then, not the kind of crack that breaks you, but the kind that sharpens you like ice splitting under pressure. The house I had dreamed of, worked for, sweated over, was no longer mine in the way it should have been. My sister had crossed into the very heart of what I built, and she was smiling at me as though I should understand. That night, lying awake in my own bed that didn't feel like mine anymore, I stared at the ceiling and counted every sacrifice it had taken to get here. The lunches skipped, the promotions clawed for, the nights alone while friends laughed over wine I couldn't afford. I thought about the $80,000 I had scraped together, the $2,300 I paid each month without fail, the hours of my life traded for this roof. And as I listened to unfamiliar footsteps move across the floor of my house, I knew with a cold certainty this was only the beginning of a fight I had never wanted, but one I would not walk away from. The next morning, before I had even finished my coffee, my mother arrived without calling. I recognized her knock, sharp and insistent, the kind that never waited for an answer. When I opened the door, she was already halfway inside, clutching a paper bag from a bakery down the street. "I brought muffins," she said, as if muffins were a solution to all problems. Behind her, my cat darted past her feet and fled to the safety of the stairs. My mother's name is Ruth, and she has always carried her opinions like stones in her pocket, heavy, ready to be thrown when she feels the moment calls for it. That morning was no exception. She set the bag of muffins on my kitchen counter with the air of someone delivering a verdict. "Jessica," she began, "be fair. Your sister is family. She's been through a lot, and now she needs stability. Let her settle here. This can be her home too, at least for now. Get out so your sister feels better." Her words sliced through the quiet of the kitchen like glass breaking. Get out. She had said it so casually, so firmly, as though the years of sacrifice and savings I had poured into this house were less important than Jenna's comfort. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. "Mom, do you hear yourself? This isn't a vacation home. It's not some extra property I'm hoarding. I paid for every single square foot of this place. I have $14,600 in receipts stacked right there on the dining table. The couch cost me $1,200. The fence in the backyard, $3,800. The down payment? My entire adult life." My mother crossed her arms and tilted her chin upward. "Money isn't everything, Jessica." The words stung, though I had heard them before. "It was everything," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "At least for 7 years, it was everything." Jenna entered from the living room, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "Look," she said, "we didn't mean to upset you. We just moved in while you were away in Boston because it was easier. Mark's parents already had their things in the truck, and it made sense. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. Behind her, George, her father-in-law, sat comfortably on my sofa, flipping through channels on my television as if he had been living there for months. His wife, Linda, poked her head out from the hallway, holding one of my hand towels. "Where do you keep the extra ones?" she asked innocently, like a house guest who had been invited. I felt heat rise in my chest. I opened the hall closet, needing to see for myself what else had been disturbed. My winter coats, still in boxes from last season, had been pushed to the floor. On the shelf, shoved under a pile of unfamiliar blankets, was my old suitcase from years ago, the one I had carried on a trip to Europe when I was 22. I pulled it out, unzipped the front pocket, and found the 40-pound I had kept as a small keepsake from a layover. I ran my fingers over the thin, foreign notes. In America, they were worthless. In Europe, they had value. It struck me then how some things only matter in the place they belong, and how my home, my place, had been taken and twisted into something unrecognizable. "This is wrong," I said, my voice steady now. "All of this is wrong." Mark, my brother-in-law, appeared in the doorway, trying to sound conciliatory. "We can pay you something if that makes it better, maybe $200 a month." just until we figure out what's next. I looked at him. I looked at my mother. And then I looked at my sister, the one person who knew every step it had taken me to reach this moment in life. "No," I said firmly. "You will not pay me to stay in my house. This is not a rental property. This is my home, and you will leave." Jenna's jaw tightened. She crossed her arms tighter and lifted her chin. "Make us." The room fell silent. My mother looked down at the counter, her hands folded neatly on top of the paper bag of muffins. George kept his eyes on the television, pretending to be invisible. Linda shuffled back down the hallway with her towel, suddenly busy with something else. And Jenna stared straight at me, daring me to act. It was in that silence that I realized my sister wasn't joking, wasn't bluffing. She had made a decision. To plant her flag in my home, to claim it with the weight of family guilt and the complicity of our mother. She expected me to back down, the way I always had when we were children, and she wanted the last cookie, or the better seat, or the newer clothes. She expected me to fold, to give in. But this was not a cookie. This was not a chair. This was not negotiable. This was the culmination of every sacrifice I had ever made. I felt the words build inside me, stronger than fear, louder than doubt. "Fine," I said, my voice low but unshakable. "If you won't leave on your own, then I'll make you." For the first time that morning, Jenna blinked. For the first time, she seemed uncertain. And in that small flicker of hesitation, I felt something I hadn't felt in years when it came to my sister. Power. The moment the words left my mouth, "Then I'll make you," something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage, not exactly. It was colder than rage, steadier. My hands felt sure as I walked across the room and bent to roll back the rug. I pulled it up with deliberate care, exposing the hardwood beneath. Then I lifted the first box I saw, one full of dishes that did not belong to me, and carried it to the porch. The box was heavy, but the weight felt righteous in my arms. I came back inside, picked up another box and then a suitcase. Each time, I placed the items neatly on the porch, one by one. I didn't throw. I didn't break. I simply moved what was not mine out of what was mine. I built a straight, careful line along the steps, as though I were organizing evidence for a jury to see. "Jessica, stop it," Jenna cried, rushing to grab my sleeve. Her nails pressed into my arm. I turned to her, and my voice was so calm it startled even me. "Take your hand off me. You trespassed in my home. You moved people into it without my permission. You tried to claim my life's work." My mother stood in the kitchen doorway, stunned, her arms hanging limp at her sides. "Jessica," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you're being cold." "No," I answered. "I am setting a boundary." Linda's face crumpled, and she began to cry. George muttered a curse, his jaw tight. Mark, my brother-in-law, pulled out his phone and started typing, his fingers frantic. Maybe he was texting a friend, maybe a lawyer. I didn't care. I reached for my own phone, unlocked it with steady hands, and dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, practiced. 911. "What is your emergency?" "My name is Jessica," I said, standing in the center of the room that I had worked for years to call mine. "I live at my address in Portland. While I was away on a business trip, my sister moved her in-laws into my home, and now they refuse to leave. I am the sole owner. I have the deed and my ID. I need help." "Officers are on their way," the dispatcher replied. "Do not escalate further. Keep the door open and wait outside if you can." I ended the call and turned to Jenna. Her face was pale now, her mouth tight. "You called the police?" she asked, her voice almost breaking. "Yes," I said simply. "Because you wouldn't listen." I stepped onto the porch and sat down on the steps, my back straight, my hands steady. The morning light fell across the boxes I had carried out, making them look almost harmless, just ordinary belongings waiting to be moved into a new place. My cat slipped through the open door and curled by my feet, pressing her warm body against my leg as if to anchor me. Minutes stretched like hours until the two officers arrived. Their cruiser pulled up to the curb, lights flashing softly in the daylight. Officer Bailey and Officer Adams stepped out, their faces calm, their movements deliberate. I greeted them on the porch and handed them my deed, my driver's license, and the most recent mortgage bill I had pulled from the kitchen drawer. Inside, Jenna tried to talk over me. She said we could watch the house, she insisted, her voice sharp and pleading at once. Watch the house, I repeated, my voice carrying. Not move in and claim it. Officer Bailey examined my papers and then turned to Jenna. Ma'am, your sister is the sole legal owner of this property. You and your guests cannot occupy her home against her will. If there are disputes, you can pursue them in civil court, but you cannot stay here without her permission. Jenna's face hardened, not into shame, but into something uglier, anger. You're choosing her, she spat, her eyes flashing. I am choosing the law, Officer Bailey replied evenly. Officer Adams spoke next, his voice firm but kind. You all have 30 minutes to gather your belongings and leave the property. If you refuse, we will remove you ourselves. The room erupted in motion. George cursed louder this time, slamming drawers and shoving clothes into bags. Linda sobbed openly, wiping her cheeks with one of my dish towels before tossing it onto the floor. Mark whispered furiously to Jenna, their words a blur of resentment and panic. I went to the side gate and pulled it open, bringing out more boxes that had been shoved into the corners of my home. I did not gloat. I did not shout. I simply kept moving one box after another, counting in my head like I do when I lift weights at the gym. Slow to 5. Again. And again. My breathing is steady, my movements deliberate. Neighbors began to notice. A woman walking her dog slowed at the sight of the officers, then quickened her pace, eyes wide. A man across the street leaned against his truck, pretending to check his phone while he watched the scene unfold. I ignored them all. This was not their story. It was mine. As the minutes passed, the house began to look like mine again. The recliner that had been squatted in my living room was rolled out to the porch. The strange family photos were pulled from the mantel and tucked into a box. The television remote was pried from George's hand and set neatly on top of his luggage. Piece by piece, the intrusions were undone. When the last bag was carried out to their car, Officer Adams approached me. Would you like a report number for your records? He asked. Yes, I said firmly. He wrote it down on a small white card and handed it to me. I slid it into the same folder that held my deed, feeling the weight of the paper as a kind of armor. At last, the car doors slammed and Jenna, Mark, and his parents drove away. Their taillights disappeared down the street, leaving only silence behind. The officers gave me a nod before returning to their cruiser. Take care, Officer Bailey said. When the door closed behind me, the house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in days. The air smelled faintly of lavender from the garden outside, drifting in through the open windows. My cat hopped onto the sofa and curled into her usual spot, purring softly. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by my own furniture, my own walls, my own space. The calm blue door was shut and locked. The boxes of strangers were gone. The house was mine again, bruised, shaken, but still mine. And as I leaned against the wall, my hand resting on the cool plaster, I promised myself one thing. Never again would I let anyone, not even my sister, take what I had worked so hard to build. The first thing I did after the officers left was change the locks. It cost me $180 and I didn't even blink at the price. The locksmith worked quickly, his van parked at the curb, his tools clinking softly as he removed the old cylinders and fitted in the new. I stood there on the porch, arms folded, watching as though my very safety depended on each turn of his screwdriver. In truth, it did. When he handed me the new keys, cool and sharp in my palm, I felt as if I had reclaimed not just a house, but myself. I spent the rest of that afternoon repairing the invisible fractures that had appeared in my sense of home. I called the bank to check that no strange transactions had occurred while I was away. I updated my alarm codes, passwords, and even my online shopping accounts. I drove to a hardware store and bought a small safe for $99, the kind that bolts into the floor. That evening, I placed inside it the deed, the police report number, and the new spare keys. It was a modest vault, but it felt like a fortress. When the errands were done, I brewed myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the walls that had seen too much in a single week. The house felt different now. Emptier, yes, but also alive again, as though its pulse had returned after a long faint. My reading chair, dragged back from the porch, was once again in its rightful corner by the window. The mantel was cleared of borrowed faces and now displayed my photos again. My college graduation, the first day at my firm, a picture of me and my friend Elena in a tiny cafe in Europe when we were 22 and broke and laughing at nothing. That trip had been paid for by saving £500 over 2 years, every spare note stashed into an envelope. It taught me how to plan, how to wait, and how to dream. The same patience had built this home. That night, as I was rinsing my cup, the phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was softer than usual, threaded with something between guilt and reproach. "You didn't have to be so hard, Jessica," she said. "I had to be clear," I answered. I stared out at the calm blue of my front door, its paint catching the glow of the porch light. I will not let anyone rewrite my life for their comfort. Not even family. She sighed, and for a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she said, "Jenna is upset." "Jenna can be upset," I said evenly. "I will be safe." There was silence on the line. I could picture her sitting at her kitchen table across town, her hands clasped, torn between her daughters. I did not rescue her from the silence. For once, it was hers to carry. The next day, I sat down at my desk and wrote out a set of rules, ground rules for my life, as clear as the mortgage statement I received each month. I typed them on plain white paper and sent them to my mother and my sister by email so there would be no confusion. No keys shared without my consent. No guests staying in my absence. No entering my home unless I have invited you. If someone needed help, I would help with what I could. $100 for a motel room, a ride to a shelter, or a list of resources. But my home was mine. My boundary was a door, with a lock, and my name on the deed. A week passed in quiet. I went to work, came home, and found myself relearning the sound of my house, its creaks and groans, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant rush of traffic on the street outside. For the first time in days, I could breathe without feeling watched. I cooked small dinners. I read in my chair. I sat on the porch and let my cat prowl the steps while the lavender swayed in the evening air. It was ordinary life, and I had never been so grateful for it. Then, one afternoon, a letter came. It was from Jenna. The handwriting was rushed, uneven, like she had been angry while writing, but softened before mailing it. She wanted to talk. She wrote that she had only moved into my house because she believed family meant open doors, that she had thought I would understand. She wanted me to see her actions as desperate, not malicious. I sat with the letter for a long time, reading it twice, 3 times. Then I wrote back. My words were measured, deliberate. Family means honest asks, not silent taking, I wrote. If she wanted to visit, she could call first. If she wanted to stay for dinner, she could bring a casserole and a smile and leave at 9 o'clock. We could start small. I did not write to punish her. I wrote to draw the line that should have been drawn years ago. As the days turned into weeks, I realized that what I had done was not just about saving a house. It was about saving myself. For so long, I had believed that kindness meant saying yes, that family meant surrendering. But kindness without boundaries is just self-erasure, and family without respect is only noise. I am not a hero. I am not a warrior. I am a woman who worked, saved, and signed. I am a woman who called 911 when I had to. I am a woman who can be kind without being weak. This house, bought with dollars and years, is my promise to myself. Now, when I walk up the path at the end of a long workday, I feel steady. I touch the calm blue door before I unlock it, letting the smooth paint remind me of the choice I made to defend what was mine. Inside, the rooms are quiet and whole. My cat greets me with a stretch, my lavender scents the air, and the safe hums quietly in the floor beneath, and in those moments, I know with absolute certainty, I have finally come home.